Welcome to Simply Suspicious, the podcast where logic goes missing faster than common sense at a family reunion. Today, we're digging into the twisted tale of Connie Franklin, a man who walked into town, got himself murdered, and then strolled right back in like a ghost with an attitude. Because nothing says Arkansas justice system in the 1920s like prosecuting a murder victim who was very much alive, cranky, and probably wondering why everyone's so bad at their jobs. Grab your moonshine and your pitchforks, folks. This one's a doozy. In January 1929, Connie Franklin wandered into the community of St. James, Arkansas, where he found work as a farmhand cutting timber. He claimed to be 22 years old, but was actually a decade older. He reportedly courted the town's girls, particularly 16-year-old Tiller Ruminer. According to later testimony by her, on March 9, 1929, she and Franklin were going to Justice of the Peace Finis Ford's office to obtain a marriage license. The two were attacked by a gang of men identified by Ruminer as Hubert Hester, Herman Greenway, Joe White, and Bill C. Straight Eye Younger. Hester and Greenway were alleged to have taken Ruminer into the woods and raped her, while Franklin was reportedly tortured, mutilated, and murdered. A spring 1929 grand jury did not grant an indictment due to the fact that there was no body and no evidence that a crime had occurred. The only claim that something had happened came from Bertha Burns, who, according to her own account, found the bloody hat belonging to Franklin and subsequently went to Ruminer demanding to know what had happened and convincing her to report the attack to the authorities. Burns had recently secured a guilty verdict in May of that year against Alex Fulks, Baxter Kennard, and Ross Younger for the flogging she and her husband Haywood had suffered at the hands of the three men the previous year. The sheriff thought he had evidence to continue the investigation into the attack, probing neighbors around the areas of Dry Creek and Cajun Creek over the next several months. 10 days prior to convening of the fall grand jury in November, Burns led the sheriff and some deputies to a place in the woods where they found an assortment of charred bones and a pile of ashes. The bones were sent to the state crime lab, and the grand jury, with this new evidence, issued 5 indictments, adding Alex Fulks to the list, as he was widely considered the ringleader of the group. The 5 men were soon arrested and held in separate jails for their own protection. Brothers Hugh Williamson, the prosecuting attorney, and Ben Williamson, the defense attorney, were pitted against each other in front of Judge Marcus Bone. All these names are wonderful. With the trial set for December 16, 1929. Complicating matters, the brothers both worked in the firm of their father, who was also president of the Arkansas Bar Association. Nepotism has been around forever, y'all. As the attorneys prepared their cases, the accused men continued to state that they had not seen Franklin on said date and that Franklin had left the community just as he had came in. Deputy O.L. Massey was provided information on December 3, 1929 from Elmer Wingo that Franklin had spent the night at his home after the alleged murder. Many newspapers, including the Arkansas Gazette, the Arkansas Democrat, and the Commercial Appeal of Memphis, ran this information along with a photo of Franklin. On December 7, 1929, Franklin was found by F.K. Marks, a cotton buyer, working on the farm of Murray Bryant near Humphrey, who convinced Franklin to come to Mountain View. When the defendants saw him, they recognized him, or at least acted like they did, and Franklin recognized them back, but there was something a little off about all of it. There was no clear reason for why he would have wanted to skip town so fast, and there was still the matter of the horrific story Tiller had told of his brutal murder. Why would she have said such things if he was still alive? Speaking of Tiller, things would get even weirder when he met her and seemed to recognize her and know personal details about her and their relationship, yet she claimed that he was a stranger and not Franklin. Prosecutor Hugh Williamson warned that, quote, somebody had lied and somebody was going to jail, stating that there would be a sweeping inquiry into the matter once Franklin's identity was confirmed. It became known that the man claiming to be Franklin was actually Marion Franklin Rogers, and he had been drafted into the military in 1926, serving 5 days before entering the Arkansas State Hospital, from which he escaped in February of 1927. He was married, had 3 children, and he had abandoned all of them. Accounts of what happened in the courtroom are conflicting. Per the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, the following happened. Judge Bone went ahead with the trial while the November grand jury heard evidence to establish the true identity of the man who claimed to be Franklin. During the trial, Tiller Ruminer admitted that she had not seen anyone killed or burned only beaten unconscious. The identity of Franklin was established by a number of persons who knew him before and after the alleged date of the murder, as well as a comparison of handwriting, fingerprints, and dental and medical records from the Arkansas State Hospital. However, Ruminer continued to deny that the man in the courtroom was the same man she had known before March 9th. The jury deadlocked and the defendants were found not guilty. But per the article written in the New York Times, the following was actually what was reported. Quote, testimony in the trial of 4 men charged with the murder of Connie Franklin, farmhand, began this afternoon with Sheriff Sam Johnson of Stone County as the first witness. He testified that he started an investigation after hearing reports last summer that Franklin had been tortured, mutilated, and burned to death near St. James Community by a band of night riders while on his way with Tiller Ruminer, his sweetheart, to be married. A small group of bones, which the state contends are the remains of Franklin, was exhibited to the jury. The absence of a temple bone, which he said was among the bones he examined for Johnson some time ago, prevented Dr. C.W. Garrison, state health officer, from identifying them as human bones. Tiller Ruminer, who was on the stand later that same day, said that on the following day, after the murder happened, one of the men in the party had told her that Franklin had been thrown on a brush pile and burned alive. She kept silent for several months under threats of death, she said, but several weeks ago she went to the sheriff and told of the affair. Brought back here, the man was identified by various former acquaintances, although many who had known him, notably his former sweetheart, failed to recognize him as Connie Franklin. Taking the stand as the star witness in the trial, the man testified he had fallen from a mule and had merely been stunned on the night Ms. Ruminer said he was killed. He said he quietly walked out of the community the following day. While the grand jury found them not guilty of murder, Hester and Greenway, however, were put under $2,500 bond on charges of attacking Franklin's former sweetheart on the same night the slaying was said to have taken place. And yet a third article, this time from Time magazine, shared that this was actually what happened during the trial. Quote, strange as the Ozark backcountry where it was enacted was the trial last week at Mountain View, Arkansas, of 4 hill barons indicted for the murder of Connie Franklin. Prime witness for the defense was a gaunt, sun-reddened farmhand who swore he was Connie Franklin himself. Quote, he ain't my Connie, insisted woebegone, calico-clad Tiller Ruminer, whose testimony of the 4, Herman Greenway, Joe White, Hubert Hester, and Bill Younger, were indicted. She repeated her lurid story of a night last March when, as she and Franklin set out to be married, they were attacked by the defendants. She testified, quote, Connie yelled out, Till! Till! They're a-killin' me! Then Joe White slammed a big rock on his head. I couldn't help him none because Greenway was a-dragging me into the bushes. Then Hester came and helped Greenway do what he was doing to me. I went back later and seen Connie laying on the road. He was dead, end quote. Later, she said, the attackers informed her that they had killed Franklin and would kill her too if she told. Another witness for the prosecution was a deaf-mute who by finger twitches testified he had seen the 4 attackers carry Franklin toward a big log fire. And guys, I am reading word for word what the article said. So that's what was in print in 1929. The state, contending that Franklin was burned alive, exhibited as the corpus delicti a box full of charred bones. Because a temple bone had inadvertently been mislaid, a state health officer would not swear that the remains were human. The live Connie Franklin said that on the night of the murder, he had started out with Tiller. He explained, quote, I fell off my mule, had a few too many swigs, and cut my head. Next day I went away. That's all there was to it, end quote. Some witnesses felt that he looked a lot like Connie. The girl's avowal that he was not her man was corroborated by others who knew him well. The jury acquitted the 4 hillmen of murder. Many a proud Arkansan, indigent at the publicity given such dark doings in the Ozarks, protested widely that they were not typical of their state, cited big city bombings and murder as equally fearful. The acquittal at Mountain View was hailed as vindication for Arkansas. Another article states that about Marion's testimony during his own trial, when Rogers himself took the stand, he presented his own version of the events from that night. According to him, he actually had gone out with the accused men, who were in fact his friends, and they had been going to pick up his marriage license to Ruminer. Along the way, he said he had gotten drunk and fallen off his mule, injuring himself and unable to continue. Ruminer had then said she wanted to postpone the marriage, but Rogers threatened to leave town if she didn't marry him as promised, and so he had left and worked at a farm in nearby Humphrey, only convinced to return when he heard that his friends were on trial for his murder. Adding to all of this, there was also a dentist who took the stand and testified that the teeth found in the ashes were in fact not human, but rather those of a dog or sheep. Dr. Brooks Blevins wrote a book on this case called Ghosts of the Ozarks, Murder and Memory in the Upland South. Blevins says the media latched on to the details of the case and used hillbilly stereotypes to characterize the area as backward. I read the articles word for word because of the language that was used and how the individuals on the stand were painted as the hillbilly stereotype. The problem was, the reporters did have a lot of material to work with. From the young sheriff and his gunslinging deputy, who also happened to be his wife, as well as the aforementioned brothers squaring off in the courtroom, one being the prosecuting attorney and the other the lead counsel for the defense. The men claiming to be Connie Franklin was an escapee of the Arkansas State Mental Hospital in Little Rock, and of the primary eyewitnesses, one was a mysterious French mountain man, and the other, who was the deaf young man, was actually the cousin to Tiller Ruminer. Some sources explain the alleged murder case as a revenge plot by Burns against Fulks and the others, who were the self-appointed moral enforcers of the rural area. Time magazine covered the trial, as did the newspapers throughout the nation, and the little town of Mountain View was inundated with reporters, spectators, and gawkers by the thousands, creating a circus-like atmosphere during the week leading up to the trial and during the trial itself. Heavy rains during this time also made the roads almost impassable. On December 11, 1929, Governor Harvey Parnell issued a public denouncement of the, quote, yellow, end quote, journalism being practiced that branded the people of northern Arkansas as peons and idiots. The cost of the trial was more than $8,000 in 1929 money, breaking the already financially burdened county. It was rumored that Judge Bone, upon the not guilty finding of the jury, ordered that all records of the trial, other than those required by the court, be destroyed so as to end the chain of gossip. However, the story lives on in local folklore. And what about Marion Franklin Rogers? After the trial, Rogers would go back to his vagabond lifestyle, drifting from place to place until he was found passed out by the side of a road outside Clarendon in December of 1932 and died of exposure 3 days later. And that's the baffling tale of Connie Franklin, the man who was murdered, maybe, sort of, not at all. Whether he was a ghost, a grifter, or just really bad at ghosting his fiancée, one thing's for sure, Arkansas justice in 1929 was doing its own thing. If you've learned anything today, let it be this. Always confirm your murder victim is actually dead, don't propose to someone in a logging camp, and for the love of legal sanity, maybe just sit the next moonshine-fueled trial out. Thanks for joining us on Simply Suspicious, where common sense goes to die and weird crimes live forever. Don't forget to rate, review, and tell your weirdest friend, we all know you have one. And also don't forget to follow us over on IG at simply_suspicious. Until next time, stay curious and suspicious, but mostly suspicious. Bye, y'all.